wait is over.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the studios in the wrestling capital of the South, it's another terrific episode of The BENGEBUSTER Show. Please welcome your host, Tony Binge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The BENGEBUSTER Show here in this great month of February. And, man, we have got some great stories to talk about tonight. A lot of interesting things happening in the wrestling world and rock world too. And here on the BENGEBUSTER Show, we always talk about wrestling and rock and roll. That's part of my life right there. So that's what we talk about. But before I could talk about anything, man, I got to bring on my co-host. I'm talking about rock and roll playboy Chris Plano. Chris, what is going on?
Terrific, Tony. Great to be back in another episode of the BENGEBUSTER Show. Looking forward to tonight's show. And, boy, things have been hectic all across the board, but we're rocking and rolling here into the month of February.
Yes, man. I tell you what, it's been crazy times, man. It's like every time you think that you've heard everything, seen everything, man, you turn the channel, you turn on the wrestling, and it's like, what? Wait a minute. He got released. Now he's an 8. So it's like guys are, and of course, now they're talking about the forbidden door where promotions are letting other talent from other promotions come and work their shows. And of course, that now they're starting to build up WrestleMania. So, right now, man, Chris, it's a good time to be a wrestling fan.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, between WWE and All Elite Wrestling and AEW, you still got TNA Impact Wrestling and all the indie shows and who's here, there, and everywhere. It's kind of wide open right now. And yes, we are on the WrestleMania and the road to WrestleMania here soon. And I think there will be a stop in Charlotte in mid-March for WWE and going on to WrestleMania into early April, and great time to be a fan. And it's just a lot going on, just across the country.
Yeah, I mean, and not only is wrestling booming here, for the two big companies, but it's really booming on the independent circuit. And as our podcast progresses, we'll get more into this huge announcement that I'm gonna be having concerning a new company here in the Carolinas. But man, they are making they are letting people know that they're not here to play; they are here to stay. And of course, we'll talk more about that later on. But man, Chris, in the news are rumors. In wrestling, we have wrestlers that have a little feud. They get into it, but man, war of the words on Twitter last week concerning our great one of my great songwriters, Nikki Sixx. Apparently, Nikki Sixx and Eddie Vedder, Pearl Jam, are having a Twitter war. Have you heard about this?
Heard a little bit through the grapevine on this, and taking stabs at each other. Kind of shocked about Eddie Vedder. I mean, Pearl Jam's been around. I mean, for a good long while. I mean, I was really following them when they really kind of exploded in the early '90s. I was really into their first 2 or 3 albums, and then it seemed like Pearl Jam wanted to take a different turn with their music, at least in my opinion. After that, and I really stopped following them. But Eddie Vedder taking shots at Nikki Sixx and Motley Crue as a whole, and I know everyone has their opinions, but I mean it's kind of tough to support a little bit what he's saying at the same time. I mean, you're talking about one of the greatest rock and roll bands of all time, and
right.
So it's like, what's going on here, and why is this happening in 2022? kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like this is something that you would think you would hear from 20-year-olds or whatnot. But basically, what was said between the two, Eddie went on Classic Rock magazine and basically said, how he despised the what he called the hair metal bands. He didn't care for that, and he specifically took aim at Motley Crue during their Girls album, and he said, he hated it. He hated how it made, how it made them look. He hated how they made women look, and he basically, he had no, no kind words to say, other than he did say, however, he spared a few kind words for another Sunset Strip mainstay. Guns N' Roses came out, and he said, thank God, at least when they came out, they had some teeth. It sounds to me like he's very bitter right now, but man, Nikki Sixx being Nikki Sixx, Motley Crue didn't get the nickname in the 80s, the bad boys of rock and roll, for nothing. Those guys had lived a life. Nikki's lived 2 lives because, he's died once and came back. But Nikki goes on Twitter, and what I liked about it was he didn't even refer to Eddie by name. He just said, in Nikki's tweet, he says, "Made me laugh today reading how much the singer in Pearl Jam hated Motley Crue. Now, considering that they're one of the most boring bands in history, it's kind of a compliment, isn't it?" Hashtag the stadium tour rock and roll. Man, Chris, I tell you, Nikki, I love that. Nikki didn't start, cussing him out and calling him all kind of names. He just basically said, Pearl Jam's boring. Here on the Binge Buster Show, we never want to talk bad about people unless I'm shooting on somebody. So maybe tonight we'll do that a little bit here, because you and I kind of talked about this before we went on air. Pearl Jam was there's one of those bands, but it's almost like they were relevant during the 90s when those the grunge bands, the grunge rock started coming in, but they didn't last very long. Motley Crue, man, how long have they been out now? 35 years.
Right.
I just don't see, Pearl Jam being, around as long as Motley Crue.
Right. No. I mean, Pearl, yes. Did the sound of music change in the early 90s? Yes, it certainly did. You had the influx of Pearl Jam and Nirvana and the Gin Blossoms, and, these bands were just coming in and they were making just the sound and roll, and maybe they were kind of casting that shadow on the 80s bands and the hair metal bands, and it was like, well, what's going on here? But I think at the end of the day, some of these bands from the 90s and beyond, if it wasn't from some of those bands in the 70s and 80s, they wouldn't be where they are today.
Right. Yeah.
So and these 80s bands have stood the test of time, and some of them are still touring with their original lineups. I mean, and some are not. Let's be realistic here. But I mean, I think there's money to be made for everyone in the music industry at some level. And, I'm just shocked to see that this is still going on, to be honest with you. And it's kind of like, I don't know. I mean, hey, if Nikki Sixx says it's a compliment, hey, it's a compliment. They have nothing to worry about. We're going on the biggest stadium tour of 2022 here this year. I don't know what Pearl Jam's doing, but we've got some people to entertain at stadiums.
Right. And I did hear that Pearl Jam is about to go on tour, and maybe that's the problem. Maybe Eddie is, he's butthurt that he's doing a little tour, and Motley are going on and doing this stadium tour, and I've heard that possibly their plan is, after they finish the tour, when I say they, I'm talking about Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Poison, and Joan Jett. I've heard that after they finish the tour here in America, they in the fall and the winter, they're probably going to be going to Europe with it. So that that's kind of exciting to hear. And I tell you, Chris, I'm always looking to take a trip. And I messaged you earlier in the week. I said, Chris, man, we got to get our bags packed. We got to go to L.A. and see Motley Crue. I'm telling you, people, you have never seen Motley Crue in concert if you have not seen them in L.A. because, man, those guys are over there.
Right. No, absolutely. It's kind of funny. It's, I'm on Pearl Jam's website now. It's funny how Eddie Vedder comes out with these comments as he has a string of solo shows coming up here. And then they've got a European stint this summer, it looks like. But then they got a bunch of postponed American tours. So it's kind of a weird schedule. I don't know what they're doing here, but it's kind of funny the timing of his comments as he's got a string of solo gigs coming up here the next couple of months and just trying to take a jab at what I don't know. It's like, I mean, it's just, at the end of the day, it kind of makes you shake your head. There's enough problems in the world going on. And, it's like, get real here a little bit. I mean, it is what it is, I guess. Like I said, I followed Pearl Jam, the first 2-3 albums. I was really into them. And then I kind of, faded out with them after that when I really wasn't much into their music beyond the third album personally.
For me, the first album I listened to after that, I was like, man, this ain't my music. The first album, it was good. It had some great songs off there. Jeremy is definitely my favorite Pearl Jam song. But it has a dark story behind it too. But it's still a good song and it was a big hit. I really don't think, I might be wrong, but I'm not knocking Pearl Jam, but I just don't see them being around as long as Motley Crue.
Yeah. We'll see, and we'll see where this goes, but Motley came, Nikki threw a pot shot back. I read quickly there's some Red Hot Chili Pepper stuff involved in there as well. And it's just like, I think if I'm Motley Crue right now, say, listen, we can't be listening to this noise. We got some big dates coming up here, from June on, and we got to get focused there. And all this other stuff is all just white noise out there for people to, jump on social media and whatever else is going on. And,
right.
I think a lot of these guys now also between podcasts and interviews and whatever they're doing. And, I think people just get caught up in what they're saying. And, some of this stuff is just, sometimes you're better off not heard.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. So it's crazy, but I'm ready to go see the stadium tour, and hopefully, I know we already got our tickets for Charlotte, but who knows, Chris? We might end up out there in LA for a couple of days, rocking and rolling, man.
Yeah, who knows? We'll see what happens. Gotta save up the pennies and nickels there and see what happens. But yeah, I think there's just going to be so much for people to choose from a concert standpoint this year. There's a lot of bands hitting the road and acts and solo tours. It's going to be, everyone's been on the couch the last couple of years. There have been some tours that have gone out, especially last year, but definitely not the influx we're going to be seeing this year. And it's not just rock and roll. It's all genres of music across the board.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a fun summer, and I'm looking forward to it. Now, something else I'm looking forward to. The buzz online last week was Shane McMahon was fired from the WWE. Supposedly there was some backstage stuff going on. I heard one story that could possibly be the fact of how he booked, because I think he was part of booking the Royal Rumble. So I'm not sure what happened, but all I know is after the Royal Rumble, he was fired. It kind of made me think about a good subject to talk about this week on the podcast. Is a lot of times you don't hear or you don't think that a wrestling booker is going to get fired for doing a show, or doing something in a show. Usually bookers get fired when they're not drawing money, or something like that. And it made me think about the time that the one of the greatest bookers of all time, from my childhood, and of course, Chris, yours as well. But the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, was fired whenever, after Ted Turner and WTBS purchased the Jim Crockett Promotions and turned it into WCW, with them being on worldwide national television. TBS kind of frowned upon getting color or bleeding. And of course, Dusty is thinking, hey, we got Starrcade coming up. We're in a whole new venue this year. We're not in Greensboro. We're somewhere else. So we've got to do something big to draw these people in. And he thought a good thing would be get a little color on TV. And unfortunately, he got it, and it was great. It was a great angle. But then after 3 weeks later, he was fired. But before we get into that, I'm going to play a little clip right now to kind of give some of the fans at home an idea of exactly what we're talking about.
Clothesline, and he's trying to choke. Well, it's 2-on-1, Tony. Well, you knew it would happen, Jim Ross. You knew good and well, with all the Road Warriors here, that it would be more. And all of a sudden, we see Animal. He is taking off one of the spikes. He is taking off a spike, and he has hit Dusty in the head with it. He just hit Rose right in the face. Oh, my goodness. God, he's put it in his eye. He's put the spike in his eye. He is jabbing him in the eye, or has, with the spike. He unhooked it from his shoulder pads or whatever it was, and he's jabbed into Dusty's eye. He's opened Dusty up. Oh, my God. They're trying to put his eye out. This is horrible. They're sticking that spike right in his eye. The Road Warriors, they are trying to blind him. They stuck that spike right in his eye. Rhodes is bleeding.
I mean, Chris, think about that for a minute, man. That was right there. I'm ready to buy a ticket now to go see that.
Right. Yeah. Dusty, back then, beloved by all the fans, was the son of a plumber, right? That they still knew him by that in many of the markets that WCW or the NWA was still hitting at that time. And, boy, where that storyline could have potentially went, but then Dusty being fired 3 weeks later, goes to the WWE for a year and a half with the, and Vince puts him in the polka dot yellow polka dot angles, and but was taking on guys like Randy Savage and Ted DiBiase and others in the WWF. But in a way, it was an opportunity for Vince McMahon to start burying some of the Southern talent from the NWA or WCW as well. And it was kind of that influx. And, but it was, I don't know. It was kind of like Dusty with an angle, and, cable TV at that time, and what they wanted and didn't want, at that time. And, obviously TBS and Turner Broadcasting. And I mean, it was a decision that was made based on what their morals or what they wanted, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. And I know TBS executives were trying to keep blood off of television, but when I hear that, Chris, I have to think about it for a second, because okay, they don't want blood on wrestling. But what happens on WTBS when at 8:05 or whatever, say 8:05 when wrestling went off, and they started playing their westerns, and they got John Wayne out there shooting another guy? I don't really see the difference in the two. Matter of fact, I guess the only thing I can think of is that, at the time, pro wrestling wasn't looked at as it is today, sports entertainment. It was a little more believable. And if you fans ever got a chance to see that clip that I played, Dusty got some good color really quick on that, Chris.
Right. Yeah, and it was, I don't know if it was more of a power thing than anything else that was going on. Who's booking, who's calling the shots here, which I believe Flair ended up getting the book after the departure of Dusty.
Yeah, well, they actually started the booking committee. I think that consisted of Ric Flair, Jim Herd, Kevin Sullivan, Jim Cornette, and one other guy. I can't think of his name right now, but I think you're right. That's what happened after that. But you know, I think Dusty. You got to think about it. From 1983 to 1988, Dusty Rhodes was the booker and top babyface for the National Wrestling Alliance, Jim Crockett Promotions, WCW, and him getting to go up to New York and work for Vince is pretty much a year and a half off, because I've heard stories that Vince told Dusty, listen, you're not booking anymore. There's no stress. Just have some fun, man. Just have some fun, make some money. And that's pretty much what Dusty did. But then, of course, he made his way back to WCW, and he stayed there and pretty much probably till the end. So, a lot of people knock Dusty's booking, but man, I tell you what, Chris, I'd give almost about anything to go back in time and get hired to work for Jim Crockett Promotions and Dusty be my booker. Man, it'd be fun.
And I know everyone, I mean, listen, Dusty's booking's been criticized up and down by the top talent in the business all the way down to the bottom and writers and whatever. Right? But, I think at the end of the day, and Dusty always liked to be in the limelight, whether it was him solo, Rock and Roll Express, or whoever was hot at that time, Nikita Koloff. He was always seemed to be in the equation to stay on top. But I think at the end of the day, a lot of the things he did, I think truly had the intentions of mind. Listen, we got to try to make the company money here. We got to try to make the workers money, the wrestlers and the workers and the TV companies. I think he always at least had that in his mind at the end of the day. But yeah, even though he always liked to put himself on top, and he always tried to be creative in what he did. And he came up with some great ideas along the way that worked. And there were some ideas that didn't work. But, I mean, everything just seems to be so magnified. But at the end of the day, we're trying to see what's clicking here, because, we got this monster company up north known as the WWF as well. So, so I think that was always his thinking at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% there, Chris. One of the things that I can remember by watching a lot of that is just the fact of Dusty. A lot of people look back and go, man, Dusty was always in the spotlight. But I think because I remember when I was booking shows, this is kind of how I felt too. I have this idea for angles, and I can tell somebody how I want it to be done, but right. in order to do it the way I want it to be done, I got to do it myself. And I think that's probably Dusty's thought process as well during during the Crockett days or the Crockett era, and Dusty, he was a genius. He was a genius for this business.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, I think, I don't think, Dusty never wanted the NWA or Jim Crockett Promotions, I don't think, in the back of his mind to ever fail. I think we're trying things to think outside of the box. I mean, I think, Dusty in his mind the whole time, he knew that Flair was the top heel, or the Horseman was the angle, and, but they just tried stuff that worked, and then some stuff that didn't work. I mean, and it was just a different time too. I mean, now, there was no social media back then. It was just cable TV was breaking in, and they really weren't pay-per-views every 30 days. And I mean, it was just a different time for wrestling. And a lot of it was house show driven. You know, it really was at the end of the day. You know, you watch TBS and then you go, here they come to town, you know, so, and they try to take those storylines on the road. I mean, and that one would have been on the road for a good long while.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
If Dusty was not let go, I mean, that could have been a feud that went on for a whole year. You know, for God's sake. So where it could have went. So, I mean, a lot of it was playing off of people's emotions, and that, you know, that's what he was doing.
Yeah. And, you know, during that time, I feel like that he made some really cool angles, real great storylines. And man, you know, I look back on those and even now to this day, you can go back and watch that old stuff, and man, it still gives you goosebumps because, a lot of people don't realize, but man, Crockett territory from 85 to 86, man, it was red hot.
Right. Oh yeah, it was red hot. I mean, they were working 6 days a week. You know, sometimes multiple shows on Saturdays and Sundays. So, you know, but yeah, I mean, it's ironic we're talking about this storyline because, you know, AEW just went off of the same WTBS in Atlanta, and in the main event tonight, both guys are as they say, bleeding profusely. You know,
right?
You know, however many years later, 30 some odd years later, you know, they're full of blood on the same station, and no one says boo.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows?
I'm telling you, it's a whole different area, for sure. But man, it was that's always good stuff. Anytime I can pull out some Crockett stuff and talk about it, it makes my day. Now, something else is going to make my day, and Chris, I know it's going to make yours because these guys, you gave these guys that I'm about to talk about. You gave them their start. I mean, you really put it out there. But major announcement, fans. Here's, as I talked about earlier, we're going to talk about it now. For the first time in several years, they are teaming up again here in the Carolinas. I'm talking about one of the greatest tag teams in the history of professional wrestling, the Hardy Boys. I'm talking about Matt and Jeff. Chris, did you ever think that you would hear that Hardy Boys, you know, getting back together? Because for several years, Jeff worked for WWE and Matt worked for, you know, TNA and now AEW, and man, they're teaming up and they're coming right in our back door, Chris. Clover High School in Clover, South Carolina. The PWF is putting on this huge card, and on this card you're going to see in action the Hardy Boys reunion. And matter of fact, Chris, this may actually be the first show that the Hardy Boys have done together since coming back together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is the first show, or it is going to be one of their first shows. You know, I know they are booked with some other promotions up and down the East Coast as well. You know, Jeff's obviously currently under the no-compete clause from, you know, his departure from WWE suddenly a couple of months ago off of a house show that he walked out of, that still has some clouds around it, I think, of what really happened. You know, we really haven't heard straight out of Jeff's mouth. We've heard out of Matt and some others, but exciting that the Hardy Boys are coming back home. Obviously, Matt still employed with All Elite Wrestling and AEW, but they're doing independent appearances. And obviously now as the Hardy Boys, they're going to be a draw. I mean, obviously, you know, WWF Tag Team Champions on multiple occasions. I mean, they've done it all, singles, you know, as a tag team. And I'm excited for them. I mean, I still remember the first time, you know, I was exposed to Matt and Jeff was in Manio, North Carolina. I went out to Manio to help someone with a show. with some equipment, and we were ring announcing and doing some other things. And all of a sudden they came out, and I'm looking and I'm watching. I just see all this high flying stuff, and the fans are going absolutely bonkers. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, these guys got some skill. I mean, these guys have it. And I'm thinking this was probably early, let me see, I'm going to say early 97, I would say. Maybe late 96, early 97.
Wow,
and
that's awesome.
You know, and actually I was with a couple other people, and I said to myself, you know, I said, there's the future. There's where wrestling is going. And someone turned to me and said I was crazy. Not going to name any names.
Right.
But I'm going to say, I don't know. I'm like, I don't know. These guys are young. They got long hair. They're jumping all over the place. And they're taking high risk maneuver. These guys got skill.
Mm-hmm.
This is just not something that they're pulling out of you know what.
Right.
And then boom, booked them on a couple of shows, both singles and in tags. And it was off and running with them. And, you know, really after that, they are a couple of years later getting their break into the WWF.
Yeah.
You know, with doing a couple of house shows in the Carolinas. That's really how they got their start in WWF. They weren't even under full contracts when they first got their break. They were just trying to see, okay, where's this going? Because really the Hardys, from a size standpoint, even when they first got into the WWF, were relatively small in stature still. You know, they did bulk up a little bit along the way, but when they first got there, I mean, it was really their high flying and agility that, you know, won them over to the fans.
Right. And because back then, you know, it was still a big man sport. You know, you had, you know, big, larger than life guys like The Undertaker, Stone Cold, Mankind, Kane, you know, those type of guys. The Big Show, DX was still hot at the time. And I remember, Chris, I had went to see a WWE, at the time it was WWF, Raw in Greensboro. And I remember I was there, and the Hardy Boys, matter of fact, that was a show they made their debut. And I remember the ring announcer saying, tonight's match is featuring a couple of Carolina boys from Cameron, North Carolina, Matt and Jeff Hardy, and they came out. And at that time, Matt was making their gear, and they dressed just alike. You know, they were still wearing tights and boots with the headbands, and happened to be there with a few friends. And this chick that was there with us said, "Oh my God, these guys were working for NDW just last week. This is awesome." So I was like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "Wait a minute, who's NDW?" And she was like, "Oh, New Dimension Wrestling. They run Thomasville." I'm like, "Oh." And then and shortly after that is when you and I met, and now here we are, 20 years later.
I mean, those are great memories. I mean, having those guys on the show, Matt and Jeff and Lita was, Amy Dumas early in the day, and then you had you had a lot, all those guys. I mean, Champagne and Joey Abs, and I mean, the list goes, Shannon Moore, all those guys. I mean, it goes on and on. I mean, Shane Helms became the Hurricane, and all those guys, they were all hanging out together. They really were.
Yeah.
Back in, and they all had their stints on the national level. I mean, and and if I'm missing anyone, I apologize. Otto Schwanz was another one, Toad, and I mean, all those guys were all out in eastern North Carolina doing their thing, from pretty much Raleigh, down to Cameron over. And that was really my exposure to them in reality. And I'm going to tell you something, Tony. And when I brought that influx of talent into NDW, it put a strain, because it actually was like some guys were losing ring time.
Right. Yeah.
At that time, and because we're trying to do other things here, and it's like there's only so many. Unless I'm going to be doing 30-man battle royals there, or 11, 12 match shows, some guys aren't going to be working.
Right.
And it became a point where, I didn't come out and would tell guys this, but I think these guys are more skilled.
Right.
Than I'm sorry.
And they're half, and at the time, the Hardy Boys were half of most of those guys' ages.
Correct. And so you had this
influx. Wasn't Jeff like 17 or something like that at the time?
Yeah, they were young. They were only on 19, 20. I mean, we're going back to mid 90s here. I think mid 96, 97. So now you fast forward now. 26 years later. It's and it's like you have guys here that can work. So it was an interesting time because you had all the old timers we'd bring in, and then you had established guys that were working in this area. And it's like, hey, I appreciate it, but there's some other things I'm trying to do here as a promotion. And, sometimes it rubs people the wrong way a little bit as well.
Yeah.
And it's a delicate balance. I mean, but you have to do what's best for the industry and your company. And if it's your company or it's someone down the street, you got to do what's best and what the fans want to see.
That's right.
I never regret any decisions that were made, but definitely, it was always the kind of thing where, hey, once they go make it big time, I'm still going to be hanging around and you're going to need me again kind of thing,
right.
But it's like, man, this is a new injection of blood. And these guys were here in the Carolinas. It's not like we were bringing these guys in from California.
Right.
These guys are right in the backyard.
Yeah. And
they were willing to travel.
Yeah. And that takes me back to this show with the PWF is running. It's right here in our backyard, Chris.
Right.
Just right down the road on the outskirts of Charlotte, Clover, South Carolina, at the Clover High School. It's the PWF presents. It's a PWF Live right there at Clover High School. Several matches are going to be there, but not just the local talent, but man, we've got mainstream talent coming to this show. As we already spoke about the Hardy Boys, but not only the Hardy Boys, but we have Demolition Axe is going to be there, or the Masked Superstar. He's going to be there. Bill Eadie, signing autographs and meeting with the fans. And then former NWA World Heavyweight Champion, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. He's going to be there taking pictures. And also in action, you'll see from AEW, Brock Anderson. That's right, the son of Arn Anderson. And incidentally, Chris, also on this great card, you're going to see WWE Hall of Famer and Four Horsemen member tag team specialist. I'm talking about Double A, the Enforcer. Arn Anderson's going to be there as well. And from what I've been hearing from the promoter, it's going to be a stacked card, and you definitely don't want to miss this. Not only that, but they're going to be offering meet and greet packages with the Hardy Boys. So to get more information, what you want to do is go to pwflive.com. That's pwflive.com. Go on there and you can find out more about this great show. And of course, as the weeks progress and we get closer to this date, hopefully we'll be able to bring some of the talent onto our podcast and talk about this show. So I'm looking forward to that. But also, Chris, I'm looking forward to the month of March. It's my birthday month, and I've had so many fans and people reach out and go, "Man, Tony, you've been doing this podcast now for 3 years. You've had all these guests on the show. We've learned stuff about Jimmy Valiant and about Jake the Snake Roberts and about Rower Animal. Man, we want to hear about you." So the month of March being my birthday month, I'm going to be telling some great stories of my wrestling career, how I got started, and tons more. So all that's coming up in the month of March, but I may have to sacrifice a couple of weeks and hopefully get some of these people in from the PWF and talk about this great show. But man, Chris, what a great podcast this week, man. We talked about the Nikki Sixx, Eddie Vedder, however you say his name, Pearl Jam singer is Nikki.
Yeah.
But we heard about their little spat. We've talked about the stadium tour, the Dusty Rhodes being fired, and of course the biggest shocker, the reunion of the Hardy Boys taking place right here in the great state of the Carolinas. So, man, Chris, it's definitely an exciting time, and I can't wait, to see what happens now. Now that Jeff Hardy is a free agent and the Hardy Boys are back together, might very well see them become AEW Tag Team Champions.
I think so. I think the sky's the limit for anyone right now. And hey, that Clover High School show sounds exciting. I know we're going to talk more about it in the weeks to come. And just across the board, I mean, it's a great time to be a wrestling fan. And some of these local shows, great family fun entertainment. You're looking to get out for an evening. Hey, listen, you can end up seeing some great talent. You never know. Some of these guys you're seeing are the superstars of tomorrow, and you never know where they're going to end up on television weeks, months, and years from now. So now's the time to catch them, and they're living their dream each and every week they step into that ring.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's it's going to be so great. I am looking forward to to being there and checking out the this great card, and who knows, fans? You never know. You may come to that show and see yours truly and Chris. They're doing a live Binge Buster show. You never know. So you gotta get your tickets and show up, man. I'm telling you.
Absolutely, and looking forward to it. And what's coming at us. And like I said, just I think looking for people just to get out, try to come back to some normalcy, and if it's just getting away from your problems for a few hours on a Friday or Saturday night, it's well worth it. And get out of the house and meet some people and see what's going on, and also supporting your local community as well.
Exactly, and it's definitely gonna be a fun time. So make sure that you check it out. Well, for Chris, I'm Tony. We will see you next week here on the Binge Buster Show.
Thank you for listening to the Binge Buster Show. Make sure you like us on Facebook and download us on your favorite podcast platform.